Welcome to another edition of Answers Network. I'm your host, Alan Cardoza, and each week this show will address many ways of creating greater health, joy, and love for you and your loved ones. We will introduce you to top professionals and talented authors who are working to make this world a better place for all of us. Now, I could say the same about my guest co-host today, Dr. Lydia Luna. Lydia is a licensed clinical psychologist with over 10 years of practicing experience. Her background includes working in private practice, working with at-risk youth, children in the foster care system, and adults in residential level rehabilitation centers. Lydia has also led one of the largest behavioral health agencies in Southern California as a clinical director and was appointed chief operating officer, serving those with autism spectrum disorder and other developmental disabilities. Lydia is also a board member of the Qualified Applied Behavioral Analysts Credentialing Board. Recently, Lydia created a space for those seeking to rest, reflect, heal, and grow by forming Moon Collective Retreats, which offers special getaways that provide both self-care and soul care, making her a great fit to co-host today's show. Now, I'd really appreciate it if you could all do me a big favor. Please forward at least one of our shows to your social media group and to someone you know who can benefit from today's subject. This is one powerful way that we can make a positive difference together. Now, I want you all to know that I am truly grateful when you take your time to listen to or watch this show, and especially those that send in questions, comments, reviews, and suggestions. Please remember, this show exists for you. Now, if you haven't gotten your free copy of the Attitude of Gratitude Journal yet, please go to our website at answers.network and download a copy. Give it 21 days and comment on whatever platform you listen to us on, what focusing on gratitude has meant for you and your loved ones. Now, our topic today is the 12 rules of attention, how to avoid screw-ups, free up headspace, do more, and be more. Simply put, attention is connected to every single thing we think, feel, and do. Our guest, Dr. Joseph Cardillo, is with us to talk about tapping into our attentional system. So this was something I thought was very interesting because I hadn't thought of it this way, but also on regulating it to our highest advantage. Dr. Cardillo is a recognized leader in holistic healthcare and a sought-after expert on body energy, attention training, and creative thinking. He holds a PhD in holistic psychology and mind-body medicine. He is the author of several books in the fields of health, mind, body, spirit, and psychology, which have been translated into 10 languages. His most notable work is the body energy classic, Be Like Water. Now, his most recent book, Body Intelligence, Harness Your Body's Energies for Your Best Life, received excellent reviews and was a #9 Library Journal national bestseller. And Football Hall of Famer and talk show host Michael Strahan refers to Dr. Cardillo as his energy guru in his own book, Wake Up Happy. Dr. Cardillo, welcome to Answers Network.
Well, thank you for having me.
Well, it is our pleasure, and I really enjoyed the looking at things a little differently. Anytime that I can pick up a book or listen to a podcast and feel like I'm getting the chance, and I sort of go, wow, I can look at this a little differently because in this case, you know, with you've presented things that I think that we all know, but we haven't looked at it this way. So share a little bit about, what drew you to that point of saying, we're doing all of these things, but by looking at them differently, it's going to allow us to understand it better and to harness it better for our own benefit.
Yeah, well, I think that part of what brought me into this work with attention was the humor of it all, at least at the beginning. And, you kind of have to we have to lighten up and laugh at ourselves a little bit, really. I mean, who hasn't gone to the grocery store, to buy one special item, and you go to the grocery store, you buy everything and on your way home, you remember, oh my goodness, that was the one thing I went there to get and I didn't get it. Or who hasn't gone out to a parking lot before and almost gotten in the wrong car,
Mm-hmm.
when I go out and talk about the book, people tell me their own stories, all kinds of funny stories that happen, as a result of our, losing our focus for a bit. So it's it was some of that humor that got me into this, but I have to say that I've been involved with focus probably since my first book, Be Like Water. Of course, what got me interested in focus in that book was a background in martial arts. I taught martial arts for 25 years, and focus was a major thing in that. And so that's where I kind of started with this. And here we are 7 books later. And I just felt this was a really good time to write this book on the 12 rules of attention. When I began writing the book, there was no such thing as pandemic, and so, that happened. And now I feel that, there's almost another layer even to the discussion with that in mind. So that's a little bit about where this is coming from.
So share with us a little bit about the differences between awareness, mindfulness, and attention, and how we can employ each one differently to our own benefit.
Well, these are terms that we use a lot, I think. The term mindfulness, for example, has started to appear on the cover of several national magazines, sometimes a couple of times a year even. And so when that happens, I think that's a good thing. I wanted to try to add a little bit to our understanding of what mindfulness is, mostly because when I see reference to mindfulness, it's usually connected with the idea of being present. And I think that's great. And I think it's really great that so many media sources and other writers are making that an issue, to try to be more present to our daily activities. So I thought, what can I add to this discussion? And I look at mindfulness a little bit differently. I look at mindfulness as presence, yes, but I also look at mindfulness as energy. And so most of us have cell phones, and if you go on your cell phone, most of us know where the flashlight control is on the cell phone, and there's a little bar, and you can raise the bar and you can brighten the flashlight, and you can keep brightening it, or you can lower the beam on the flashlight. You can lower the intensity of that beam. And I look at mindfulness in a similar way. Mindfulness is the energy of attention. It's the energy of presence. So you can increase the energy or you can lower the energy, because we can be present, but we can be dull. Okay. And so if you tell yourself, just be present, I think that's a good start. But I think that if you look at mindfulness as the energy of being present, and think of that analogy of the flashlight bar on your cell phone, that you can increase that energy or you can decrease it. So for example, at this moment, I can be attentive and mindful of my right toe. But if I want to increase the energy of that mindfulness, I can become so present to that right toe that I can feel the toe inside my shoe. I can even feel the sock below my toe. I can feel my shoe beneath the sock and I can feel the floor beneath that. And you can play with that concept a lot. It doesn't have to be your toe. It could be really anything. But you can increase or decrease the amount of energy that you want to put into your presence. And I call that mindfulness. Awareness is a fantastic tool. And I think that we're going to come back to this a couple of times in our discussion, because it's a tool that's almost magical. I won't call it magical, but I'll say almost. My children are upstairs right now. They're on break at the high school, and I can't really be paying attention to them, but I'm aware that they're upstairs. Mm-hmm. I live in the Berkshires here in New York and into Massachusetts, and as we go down the mountainsides, there are a lot of hairpin turns. And as we're approaching the hairpin turns, sometimes depending on how bad that turn is, we may see road signs indicating a hairpin turn coming up miles ahead. So you might see if the turn is really bad enough and risky enough, you may see signs 3-4 miles ahead of that turn. And then every so often see another sign and yet another sign until the turn comes up and you see your final sign for the hairpin turn. But so you can't really be paying attention to the turn because you're not there yet, but making yourself aware of that turn, or motor vehicles making us aware of that turn, has somewhat interesting effects. One of the effects of being aware, and I call that a pre-awareness, really, like a preset, as we approach the turn and we're pre-aware of that turn that's coming up, when the details of the turn actually hit us in real time, then we're more apt to notice the details that refer to that hairpin turn among the flood of details that might be in front of us at that particular moment. So making ourselves pre-aware of anything makes us more disposed to identify or focus upon the details as they come up in real time. The other thing that awareness does, and I call it stickiness, almost like a super glue. As those details come up and as we start to pay attention to them, we glue to them, we attach to them with our attentional system, we attach to them a little longer. And although it's not much, it might just be a split second, it's the little difference that could make the big difference as we take the turn. So we're constantly flooded with overwhelming detail that we're trying to move around and focus in on what's important. If we're pre-aware of where we want to be in a particular experience, we'll identify it quicker and we'll stick to it a little longer so that maybe we don't miss it. And so awareness, and particularly pre-awareness, is a tremendous tool when we're trying to regulate our attention in any situation, because it helps us. It won't assure it, but it helps assure that we'll nail the right detail in real time. And attention, my definition of attention, you're going to get a lot of definitions of what is attention, but my short definition of attention is that attention is it's an ultra sophisticated fetching mechanism that tries to give us solutions and present us with information in a given situation. So it's a fetching situation for information. And our attention system, things happen in milliseconds. Our attention system sends out a net and brings back information for us as we enter an experience. It creates a kind of a mini experience, and very quickly in milliseconds fetches information for us, traversing our memories, traversing past experiences that are similar, past thoughts, past feelings, internal, external, the environment, brings that information to us, and then we can decide or not And if we don't decide, then the rest is automatic.
Right.
And yeah.
Go ahead.
No, that's good.
Dr. Cardillo, I have a question. So, as you talk about attention and focusing on specific aspects of our experience, some people tend to focus on the negative aspects, or they become aware of harmful situations. They go towards the negative side or persevere on negative thoughts. So how would you recommend that one shifts their focus from something maybe negative to something less negative or more helpful?
I think about that a lot because it's pretty common. And I think that I think timing has something to do with, like, how much time do we have, for example, with something. If it's something that's somewhat predictable, like I know when I'm in such and such a situation, this is the way I am going to behave, then I can start to use awareness as part of my formula. So I can make myself pre-aware that when I'm in this particular situation, I tend to feel this way. And that's when I bring in two of my other tools. And the two tools that I find optimum for all of this are reflection and visualization, which are just slightly different. But I'm going to work them. I'm going to work these four tools together. Mindfulness. I'm going to try to increase my energy as I become aware of the situation that I'm predicting I'm going to be in, or I know I'm going to be in. And then I'm going to reflect on that situation, possibly reflect on a similar situation that I was in before. And I acted in a way that wasn't to my best interests for the goal that I was, working in that particular experience. And so as I go through, as I trace my footsteps through that experience, and I see where my mind went, what was responsible for that in the reflection. Was it a feeling that drove my mind there? Was it something in the external environment that drove my mind there? Was it a former memory that drove my mind there? I'm kind of tracing my footsteps as to how I got there. And then once I can identify some of that, then I can start to reflect on how I might want to change things. What could I do differently that could either avoid that or could substitute an action or a thought or a behavior for that. And then as part of my formula, so now I'm becoming aware. I've got my spotlight on real bright. I'm reflecting and tracing footsteps of what brought me to that mindset that I didn't like. And now I'm going to visualize a situation that I'm creating that's similar to the one that's coming up. And I'm going to draw on my behaviors that I might engage that would be more appropriate. And I'm going to visualize myself doing that. And often, I've mentioned this to individuals before too, and they'll say something like, "Oh, but I did that and it didn't work." But how many times did you do that? And that is so important. They'll say, "Well, I did it. I visualized it, and then I went in the situation and it didn't work." But here's what's happening. From my perspective, here's what's happening. I look at the behaviors as templates. So, we talked about our attention system going through our memories, going through our thoughts, going through our feelings, the environments, our internal environments, our external environments, in situations that are sort of a micro experience to where we're headed. And what it's going to bring back is coordinates, templates, behavioral templates that we have that triggered last time we were in this situation. And they're going to trigger again unless we do something to change that configuration. we could call them coordinates. Unless we change those coordinates, they're going to trigger again pretty much the same way. It's kind of like when somebody passes us on the freeway, and we have we have something we say or do. I have friends that let fly a whole slew of pejoratives when something like that happens. And it's not like they sit there and they think about it. It's not like they say, oh, somebody just passed me on the throughway. I'm upset, and here's how I'm going to respond. They just do it,
Right.
And then later on, they ask themselves, oh, my goodness, what did I just do? So that's the way it is in the experience. These things are happening so fast that our old coordinates kick in and we're stuck. But the one thing we can do is, as I said, we could reflect, try to identify what coordinates are kicking in, try to see what changes we can make, and then visualize those changes. But the visualization has to happen just like as if you were training a muscle. It has to happen over and over again. And then it's almost like building up a habit in our mind, and then that habit will kick in real time. But in the meantime, anybody who's listening in, and me too, and all of us, in the meantime, we have to expect to mess up, because the old coordinates are still the strongest template, are still the strongest path. And so we'll defer to that until we weaken those coordinates, replace it with the new behavior that we want. And then once they're weak enough and the new behavior replaces it, it'll go away.
Joseph,
that's a lot.
Yeah. One of the things, and I think in years past, I wore as a badge of honor the fact that I was always multitasking. And I think as a society or as a culture, that became something that we thought was a good thing.
Yeah.
What is that really? And is multitasking actually something that is taking our attention and splitting it up so much that we're not doing anything well? Because that seemed to be the other way to go with it. And I remember my father sharing at one time, when I was so proud of the fact, he says, so what are you doing, son? I'm doing this, and I'm doing this, and I'm doing this. And he said, so are you doing all of them well? And it was it made me think. So what's your thoughts on that?
Well, multitasking is something to avoid, but generally, if we've only got so much energy, one of the things that affects our attentional system is our energy. So, I mean, we all know that as our energy depletes, as we become fatigued physically, we become mentally fatigued. When we become mentally fatigued, our memory isn't so good, our focus isn't as good, and we start to lose our acuity. So, why would you want to add another task to drain your energy even more? So that's not multitasking isn't a good idea just for that. Then, if you're focused on two different things, obviously you're not wholly focused on one, and you might miss something important. Even if your energy is up, you might miss something important. So for that reason, it's not really a good idea. Some people argue that you can multitask if the two areas of interest are really closely related. So, for example, if I'm driving in a city that I'm not usually in, and my wife is in the passenger seat, and she's got she's got my iPhone with a map on it on where the restaurant is that we're looking for and what turns I need to be making. If she's telling me that as I'm driving down the street, some might argue that that's a kind of multitask. I'm driving, but she's giving me, the next right-hand turn is the one you need to take. That's not so bad. But if she were reading me a recipe for how to make lasagna, as I'm driving down the street, then it might be an issue,
Yeah, I love that. So coming to mind for me as you're speaking is I love that you're reminding us that we have the power to shift our focus, become more aware of what we're doing, because a lot of us, I think sometimes we're like in this state where, I don't know why I think like that. I don't know why those thoughts come. I don't know why I feel like that. And there isn't a lot of attention in, okay, well, let's look into that. And how
Yeah.
you're saying, even in building this new muscle of attention or having these thoughts come up, exploring the reasons behind it, and then making a shift.
Yeah, absolutely.
Saying you're empowered to make all of these changes.
Absolutely.
So with that, what would you say for people that may be struggling with ADHD or that difficulty with inattention, as like an encouragement that they can do it too? Because I feel like this population is also really struggling with feeling maybe like they're lacking something or they're deficient in something that others can do so well, but they can't, and it really affects their level of functioning sometimes.
A couple of things. Probably the simplest thing, and the first rule, actually, in my book, is pay attention to how you're paying attention. So, I mean, that kind of reiterates what you just said. Is to that we can regulate this, and that the first step is really to see what's going on up here. Like, if something occurs, even when something good happens, I find that a lot of times, people want to start paying attention to their focus when something goes wrong. They're operating a piece of machinery and something, some risky machinery, and something goes wrong, and they might say, what did I do? How did I not pay attention when I was doing that? And they look for what went wrong, either within themselves or the environment or something like that. Or, how many times, people, you're going down, this is so common, we're driving down the street. Well, some people drive on the thruway, and they've told me they'll drive for 2 or 3 miles. This is very, very common too. They'll drive for miles, and all of a sudden they arrive at their destination and they don't even know how they got there. How did I get here? I wasn't paying attention to any landmarks or anything. Once I drove from Syracuse, New York to Albany. It was at nighttime, and the first thing I remember was picking up my ticket on the thruway, and then the last thing I remember was paying, the ticket. And I said to myself, "Oh my God, how did I do this?" Well, you do this because you've got the templates, you've got the coordinates to drive the car. So once you've made something automatic, you don't really need to be putting much attention to it, and in fact, if you think about how you're doing it, you'll mess it up. Anybody who plays tennis or golf, if you think too much about what you're doing, you can't do it anyway. So there's that. But, oftentimes when something goes wrong, that's when we think, like, where was I? I just drove 5 exits and I didn't even notice. Maybe I better start noticing before something happens. So we think like that. But other times things go right. Things happen that are great and unexpectedly. And during those times, I think we should reflect too. We should go back and say, what did I do that was right? I mean, I was right on. I was spot on with everything that I did. What caused that? And to look for the causes of things that go right, to look for the causes of things that don't go so right, and to look for the causes of things that we may want to improve. How can I cause these things to improve? So reflection is part of it, but to pay attention to how we're paying attention in those moments. So when I reflect, what I'm reflecting on is, where was my head when I was in that situation? Where were my thoughts? What was I thinking? Where were my feelings? Where were my memories? What else was going on inside me? What was I doing right before that? Sometimes it's funny what you dig up. You find a student who walks into a test and suddenly does great. What did you do beforehand that was different? If this is different for you, and then do it again. So to pay attention to how we're paying attention. But then there's other things that I've looked at and looked at with other people too, other colleagues, to see, because I know you asked particularly about ADHD. There's other things that we've looked at that can be used, and one of the things besides some of these mind-body tools of reflection and visualization and so on. One of the other things that we tended to favor was sound, using natural sound, both to calm and also to activate, using natural sound. And we like that. We like using natural sound because sound permeates the whole brain. And so sound will really give you more of an effect than some other things that you might try that are mind-body tools. And for that, we like natural sound and we like music. And I can go into that a little bit if you'd like.
And actually, yeah, I'd like for you to go into that. I like the fact that you were talking about focus and ADD and how it affects people. Wait, there's a squirrel. Hang on. But no, see, and how is it that we can be on one subject and we think everything is going great, but yet the slightest little thing will take us off, and it's the type of thing to where, and I use the squirrel thing because it's to me, it's like with my dogs, I take them out and we're going for a walk or whatever, and whatever it is that we're doing, there's a squirrel somewhere that takes off, and whatever it is that we were doing, or whatever, if we were practicing training, whatever it was, that became more important, or that took their attention completely away. And how can we stay more focused, and not have those, as I call them, squirrel moments, to where it's like, oh, and all of a sudden, where was I? And then you lose it again.
But again, it's like, it's like a training. So it's the difference between mind-body tools that I talk about anyways. The difference between mind-body tools and, say, a pharmaceutical is that the pharmaceutical is going to work like that. Yeah. It's going to work. And that's why they're good. I mean, some people need a fix. It's going to work like that tonight or even quicker, But the beauty of a mind-body tool is that you're not going to have any side effects, negative side effects, at least the tools that we're talking about. But on the other hand, they're not going to work instantly for anybody. They take some training, and they take some understanding, so a little bit of work on people's part. But the beauty of it is they won't have the side effects, and they can be very long lasting because we're going to use them to train not only your attention, but your behavior in specific situations. So what I'm trying to do, like, let's say with sound and with some of these other things that we're talking about, like reflection and visualization and so on, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to literally change the electrical activity, the electrochemical activity that goes on in our bodies. So it's kind of like a psychological, biological kind of training. So I'm using my mind to train my body, and also vice versa. I'm using my body to train my mind. And so, for example, if I can use a piece of sound to change the electrical activity of my brain waves so that I can give them a higher velocity when I'm feeling down. But we all do this kind of naturally. We're feeling kind of down. We're out on the highway. We're tired when we're driving. So we put a piece of upbeat music on. And the reason that that's working is that it's increasing the velocity of our brain waves and making us more alert and making us more acute. And if it's a song that we like, which of course it would be, that's why I hope that's why we would put it on. Then there's also a kind of a hormonal connection with that, and now you've changed not only the electrical activity that's going on in your head, but you've also changed the chemical activity that's going on. And what you're doing is you're increasing your alertness. if you're doing it right, you're increasing your alertness. But you can go the other way too and calm yourself down. And we already kind of naturally do this. And so one of the things that I started looking into quite a few years ago, it was pre-2008. I know that. So this was quite a while ago. One of the things that I started to look into back then was, all right, so we know how this works. We know that music and natural sound and even imagery, these frequencies can affect the electrical activity in our head. So what can we do to increase the effect? So if we were talking about pharmaceuticals, it would be, what can we do to increase the milligrams? Well, with that, it's easy. But with mind-body tools, it's not necessarily, you have to find it. It's not there. I can't just say I'll do it, So what can you do to increase the effect of sound on brain waves, on chemical bursts and so on? And number one, and what can I do to make them last longer? So I want to increase the effect, and I want the effect to last longer. And then if I can do that, is there a way to train your mind to take over for you? Is there a way that I can get my mind to do that without having to have the natural sound? So for example, if every time I go jogging, I play this particular song to get me going, is there a way I can train my mind? I can condition my mind to take over and automatically make my body behave the way I want it to behave? And the answer is yes. And so that's the direction that I've been trying to go really from book one, is to find ways to change the body's electrochemical activity, to use the mind to take over and ultimately make the mindset that we want, also the motor behavior that we want, the emotional behavior we want. Is there a way that you can do that, train it in a specific situation to the point where it becomes automatic? So when I go to an office meeting, and let's say I'm never calm, is there a way that I can use sound and some of these other methodologies to train my mind to go there automatically, so that as soon as I open the door and walk in there, I'll revert to calmness without the tools? Yes. And the answer is yes. And that's why I thought it was so important to write a book about it.
Yes. So the power is within.
Within, yes, within. And it in a way, it's fun. It's all about discovering, realizing that we can do this. And it isn't really the for me, the greatest thing is that it isn't like this is so new that nobody's ever thought of it before. These are things that we all have a sense of already. We all have a sense of, geez, if I go out and take a walk on a nice sunny day, I can alter my mood.
Yes. Yeah.
Absolutely. With us is Dr. Lydia Luna and Dr. Joseph Cardillo. We are talking about the 12 rules of attention, how to avoid screw-ups, free up headspace, do more and be more. Stay with us. We'll be right back. You're listening to Answers Network.
Founded over 30 years ago to meet the needs of families in crisis, West Shield has continually focused on resolving issues that negatively impact families and businesses. Our signature therapeutic transportation service helps to ensure that adolescents in crisis are safely transported to specialized schools, programs, and treatment centers with unsurpassed experience and success. We are supported by our full-service licensed investigation agency that has legally, professionally, and compassionately located hundreds of runaways and teens. We are experienced and qualified to help, offering solutions which may include referrals to our international network of top professionals in the fields of educational consulting, psychology, psychiatry, and investigations. Simply put, West Shield Adolescent Services and West Shield Investigations are the best solutions when your family is facing a personal crisis. Call 1-800-899-8585 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. That's 1-800-899-8585. Or visit our website at westshield.com. Thank you.
And we're back. With me is Dr. Lydia Luna, and we have Dr. Joseph Cardillo, and we are talking about attention. We're talking about how we think, how we feel, how we do. And we've got some very interesting areas that we've been touching on. And again, I think I mentioned earlier, Dr. Cardillo has a classic book, Be Like Water. His most recent book, Body Intelligence, is Harness Your Body's Energies for Your Best Life. I think that pretty much says it.
Yeah. Okay, so another question that's coming up for me is, as we talk about becoming more aware, reflecting, I know there's a part in your formula, I think in your steps, about how to think fast. So how does one do that? Are we aiming to slow down, or does slowing down naturally help us think faster because now we're not as distracted? So maybe you can talk more about that and clear that up.
Yeah, I think that we need both, really. We need to be able to slow down and even stop, and we also need to be able to think fast in certain situations, particularly, when I'm thinking of students taking tests, I'm thinking of people working with machinery at work, I'm thinking with, people, doing something athletic. We need to really be able to think fast. And so many, we could just think of so many situations just driving a car. And so one of the ways that we can start to, we're going to think fast anyway. We're going to think fast anyway about, people toss around a lot of percentages, so I like the higher one. About 96% of what we do throughout the day is automatic. We're on automatic pilot. And so we think about a lot of things. We think, well, when I ride my bike, I don't have to really think about it. Or, we all remember when we first drove the car. Oh, yeah. Remember when you first touched the gas pedal and the car jumped, or you first hit the brake and it kind of stopped abruptly, and you have to think about all these things. Gee, how hard did I push last time? And now we just get in the car, we drive, and as we were talking earlier, some of us drive, for exits and exits and exits on the interstate without even thinking about it, So, and even when somebody cuts us off, we know what to do. It's not like we have to stop to think about it. Once I went to a lecture, back in the day, I went to a lecture by semi-force on all the probabilities that we have to go through just to apply the brake pedal. And it was, at first I thought this was going to be grueling, but it turned out to be a great lecture. All the probabilities, so that we don't hit the person in front of us, so that we don't jerk the car, so the person behind us doesn't hit us. And yet we do it, and we do it in split seconds. And it's just an amazing, it's an amazing thing. So we're going to think fast, because 96% of what we do throughout the day is automated. And so I have friends that say, does that mean we're zombies? We're just going around, like drones, and just, we're all preset. And the answer is yes. We are kind of like drones, and we are preset, and there are those who argue whether we even have any will over this, but I think we do, and I think that other 4% adds up. That 4% that we're able to regulate adds up, and we want to make automations. We want to make automatic behaviors too. So that if I've spent hours and hours perfecting a swing in tennis, I can repeat it without having to think about it, and then I can think about other things while that's kicking in automatically for me. So, one of the things that we can do is to create automatic behaviors that fit the situations that we think we're going to be experiencing in the near future. And so what I generally say to people is, pick an experience. I mean, we can't be on 24/7. We can't be. And another reason why we have automatic behaviors, but, pick something that you really want to have more regulation over, a situation where you really want to be performing your best that's coming up, and start early. Start, doing some of the things we've been talking about. Make yourself pre-aware. Reflect on how it went before in a similar situation. See what you might want to do differently. See what might be different about the situation that's coming up, what might be different about individuals that are in the situation with you that's coming up, and anything that you might want to change, and start to visualize those changes. And we can make those behaviors automatic when they arise. There isn't an athlete that I've worked with or that I know, after 25 years of working with different athletes, that doesn't do this, that doesn't, go home and visualize what went wrong with a game, or visualize, I'm going to play this team for the first time, and here's what I know about some of the players, and this is what I can see this player doing this, and this is what I'm going to do when he or she does that. And, we all do this, and we perfect our behaviors in that way, athletically and just humanly, I think. And by taking things one at a time. So, maybe I'll take one thing I'd like to change or try to make a little better for myself next week, just one thing, or even the next 2 weeks. And I'll work on that by using pre-awareness, by using visualization, by using reflection, by tracing, by doing all these things that we've talked about, trying to create the habits in our head so that when they appear in real time, we'll be able to adhere to them. If I just do that little by little by little, at the end of a year, I mean, it sounds like a long time, but at the end of a year, look at how much I could have changed, especially if these are important things.
Well, and we have a question that's coming in that's very topical because it has to do with what a lot of people are going through right now. This question that is being sent in reads, as convenient as it should be not to have to drive to the office, I just can't seem to focus very well at home.
Oh yeah.
It says, I have a nice home office, a nice quiet environment, and yet I don't understand why I'm feeling this way. My motivation and focus are so out of whack at home as opposed to being in the office. What is your opinion on this? And what can I do differently to be more productive from my home office? This is from Melinda in your home state of New York. And unfortunately, we've only got a couple of minutes. So, and we have another question to follow up with this.
Okay, here's my quick answer. Me too. Me too. And everybody. And the reason for this is that we've spent years, most of us have spent years developing good habits to get us through the day. And now the rug's been pulled from under us. And we have to operate in an extraordinarily different environment with extraordinary different influencers, external, internal, all these things that we're doing differently are affecting this ability to pay it. What I'm doing here, I hardly ever did before. I do these things live, live in-house. But so we're all operating differently. And what's going to happen is we have to develop new habits doing this, the things that we've been talking about on the show, doing these. We have to identify what we want to improve and go for it the way we've been talking about it. But one more thing, for everybody, we're going to experience this again when things go back to normal, because we had habits we relied on. And that's where our attention system went for answers. Now we've developed new habits that are working, and some good, some bad. And this is where they're going to go to when we go back to whatever was normal before. So expect a little turbulence, but the fix is the same. The fix is the same.
Right. And Melinda, I can also say that you'll also find more information in the book. So another, one more quick question, and really we really only got probably a minute, but this one says, I work with a wonderful team of 6 employees at a local medical clinic. One coworker who has been with us for 5 years has been failing to complete her work and making frequent mistakes. She has asked a couple of us to look over her paperwork. That is how concerned she is about her own performance. We have all been under tremendous stress and distracted this last year. Could this be what is going on with her? I ordered your book as a gift after reading you were going to be on this show. I was hoping you might give us your thoughts on helping raise up everyone in our team. And this is from Haley in California.
And I have a case study of somebody just like that in my book.
Perfect.
And that, you know, and it's so common. It's very, very common. And in the book, I just walk you right through, you know, a situation just like that, and using the skills that we've been talking about here as a way to spin out.
All right. Now, so Lydia, before we go, I didn't get a chance to touch on it too much in the beginning, but can you just share a little bit in regards to the retreats and any upcoming dates and where people can get more information?
Yes. So really quickly, I love what we talked about today, and it kind of touched on what I also do is I take a holistic approach to wellness. And in our retreats, we incorporate different healing modalities such as sound healing, breath work, and integration. So we talk about what's happening, what's coming up for people. And our retreats are right now taking place as single-day retreats for people that have a busy lifestyle and can't really get away. So we offer them in Southern California. We do have a few coming up soon. We have one April 18th in Thousand Oaks, California. All of them are in Thousand Oaks, California. And May 8th and June 5th. So feel free to reach out. You can go to mooncollectiveretreats.com or go to our Instagram page under the same name, Moon Collective Retreats, Facebook, and connect with us so we can register you. It's an amazing experience. People really report feeling really good off of one day. So like we talked about today, it's all about building healthy habits and practices, and this could be one you incorporate.
I love it. And if you're driving out there and you can't write that down, we'll make sure that information is on the answers.network site as well. Joseph, how is the best way that people can either get a hold of you or to get the book?
Well, you can find the book, The 12 Rules of Attention, on Amazon or anywhere books are sold. And you can also go to my website, which is josephcardillo.com.
Perfect. And the same thing goes, if you're driving, we'll put all of that on the answers.network site to get all of that information. Joseph, thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate everything that you're doing, and keep up the great work.
Same. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
All right. Lydia, it is always our pleasure to have you, and look forward to having you back again soon.
Yes, I really enjoy it. Thank you.
All right. For everybody out there, be good human beings and be with us next week on Answers Network.
You're listening to Answers Network with Alan Cardoza, only on LA Talk Radio.